I'm going to say some things I've never said before. You don't let me speak. You're afraid of what I have to say. You don't even know what I have to say. But you imagine it's terrible. You feel guilty. You try to deflect my attention. You make up problems. You act thick, weak, incapable. You paint yourself as some kind of victim. You draw me in to feel sorry for you, to worry about you, to run around after you, trying to solve all your silly dramas. You don't care if I suffer as a result. It's not your main priority. When I say I feel responsible for you, you're incredulous. If I show concern, you tell me to stop looking for things that aren't there. And you play me off against the others. You'll do anything to keep me in this vicious circle. But I've worked you out. You're only like it with me. She didn't know how it started or when. All she knew was that she was obsessed. She tried to spend less time with her. Was it revenge or self-preservation? Either way, she spent much of this time thinking about her, fantasising about speaking plainly with her, and then embroiled in imaginary confrontations in which she got to do all the talking. I won't leave you alone until you stop bothering me. I won't leave you alone until you stop bothering me. I won't leave you alone until you stop bothering me. I won't leave you alone until you stop bothering me. You say I speak to you like a social worker. I've never met a social worker. You say I speak to you the way you were taught to speak in assertiveness training. I've never had assertiveness training. I ask you to speak to me without getting angry and raising your voice. You say it's more honest. I always try to be honest with you. You tell me I'm harsh and critical. You wonder if I even like you. Sometimes I wonder if I do. It's pointless. I've tried, but we just argue and she accuses me of attacking her, even though I always maintain a calm, placatory tone. She flares up at any criticism and doesn't let me get my point across. She's not interested in me, what I have to say, my life, my feelings. Every day, as soon as I see her, I ask her how she is. She replies with a long list of petty complaints. I wait for her to ask me how I am. She never does. She doesn't want to know. I always ask her how her day's been, and again she'll seize the opportunity to tell me how hard her life is. I disagree. I think she's lost all perspective, but I can't dare tell her this. Instead, I try to listen and sympathise, and I wait for her to ask me about my day. She never does. I say to myself, don't sulk, share your day. Maybe she is interested, really. So I'll say, well, I had a nice day, and tell her a bit about it. Half the time she'll interrupt loudly and dramatically change the subject. If I say she interrupted me, she sulks and says, well, you must have paused for breath. The rest of the time I'm met with silence. No questions, no comments. She doesn't want to know because she's not interested. Anyway, it doesn't matter because I don't care anymore. I refuse to accept you until you agree to change. I refuse to accept you until you agree to change. I refuse to accept you until you agree to change. I refuse to accept you until you agree to change.
So you hold it like that, it won't bite you. Try it. He won't bite. He won't bite you.
Every month I write a letter to my brother and never get a reply. Occasionally I include photos of the family that apparently get ripped up. Every month I phone him and wait for the staff nurse to tell me he doesn't want to speak to me. Every other month I take a 5-hour round trip to visit him. He lets me give him a quick hug and then tells me he doesn't like visitors and asks me to leave. I don't take it personally because I know it's his illness. Even though it's been 12 years now, I know that one day he'll get better and that when he does he'll know I'm here because I've been here all along.
Be brave. Be brave.
You don't phone him saying he doesn't want to speak to you. You don't write to him saying he doesn't want to know you. You visit him only once a year, even though you're in the area more often than that. Every day, week and month that goes by, is he getting the message you care about him? Is he getting the message you think about him? Is he getting the message you love him? I wonder what fills that space. Action. During our recent telephone conversation, this is what you told me. When I draw my pension, I'm always waiting for someone to tap me on the shoulder. I feel like a fraud, like I'm pretending to be a pensioner. Inside, when I'm lonely, I feel like a child, a small child with no one. I see other adults and think, they're just so grown up. I can't relate to people my age because I've had no one to grow up with. Emotionally, I feel like a child. As a child, I felt no one was on my side. I'm aware I've been suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder most of my life, but I deal with it. I don't believe in professional help. Talking about things makes them worse. When you tell me stuff like this, I feel only bitterness. I really wish I could still be sympathetic and a good listener, be the therapist or friend you need. The fact that I can't makes me feel like I might be a selfish, unkind and heartless person. The thing is, I'm not the right person to tell this stuff to. It's just like when I was little and you told me all the awful things that happened to you when I was too young to know. I'm sorry that I was your best option when it came to working out your emotional problems. The thing is, I really need to leave this tangled drama I find myself in with you. But every time we talk, you never forget to tell me that you're alone, vulnerable, suffering, not coping. I resent it. I resent the way I've allowed my whole life to be affected by this. I resent the way I've allowed my relationships to be affected by this. I resent being made to feel resentful. I resent the fact you didn't deal with your emotional problems and allowed them to affect us all. I resent the fact you haven't changed, haven't learnt, haven't grown. I resent that you never miss an opportunity to tell me how alike we are and how funny it is that you are just the same as me at my age. Cut. I'll stop acting responsible for you when you stop treating me like your mother. I'll stop acting responsible for you when you stop treating me like your mother. I'll stop acting responsible for you when you stop treating me like your mother. I'll stop acting responsible for you when you stop treating me like your mother. Because her needs were not met by her parents as a child, she has remained needy. If she had been able to take responsibility for herself, she could have broken the cycle, but she hasn't been able to turn it around. It might be helpful to try to accept it's all she could do in her limited capacity and that she can't change. If she accepts responsibility for her life, she'll have to realise how much she has limited herself, and the knowledge of how much of it was self-created would be devastating. Dear Mum, I'm writing this letter to you at your suggestion in an attempt to improve our relationship. For many years now I've been unable to hide my frustrations with you, and this has resulted in a negative experience for both of us. I hope that by sharing my feelings with you now, it will result in a better relationship going forward. In preparation for this letter, I began by making a list of all the ways in which I felt you had not done right by me. But the more I wrote, the more I felt it to be petty and pointless to want things which happened years ago. I know that 10 years ago when my son was born, I did some stupid things which I regret, but I learnt from them and took care not to repeat them. I can see you did the same. I know I'm a different person now, and I want to extend this acceptance to you and your past parenting of me. I wonder then why I still have an urge to confront you about things when I have accepted our past mistakes. And I realise it's because I'm still affected by the way we relate to one another, not in the past, but in the present. In all honesty, our relationship as it operates now does not work for me. After so many of our interactions, I come away feeling stressed, frustrated, disappointed or resentful. Somehow my needs are not being met. Our relationship often feels one-sided, and that things are only harmonious between us when I'm listening and you are talking. I often feel that you're not willing to hear what I have to say, and this in turn makes me feel you're not interested in me. Much of the time I don't enjoy your company. You talk 90% of the time, and 90% of what you say is negative, commonly talking about the faults and failings of people you don't like, including people you've met once or hardly know at all. I can't bear the way you so freely paint everyone in such a bad light. After time in your company, my feeling drained, stressed and irritable affects those around me. And I spend so much energy on you, I don't have enough left for my own family, my work or myself. But as draining as it is, I always keep in touch and phone and visit regularly to allow you to get things off your chest. But when talking about people you can turn to when the chips are down, you say you have no one, pointedly never acknowledging me. I find this hurtful considering I feel I've given so much of myself. When I listen all day to your complaints, I feel like you're saying to me, "Feel sorry for me, poor me, isn't my life awful?" I honestly believe you have the opportunity to have a great life. I don't think your life is terrible, but I do think there is much you could do to improve it. Anyway, I understand now that it is your responsibility to do so. As I don't wish to have a relationship with you which leaves me feeling unhappy, I've tried repeatedly to change the way we relate to one another. I realise my mistake has been trying to change you. When you describe some bad luck you could not have prevented, I suggest things you could have done differently. When you make statements which I don't believe are true, I let you know. I can see how annoying this must be, but I have been doing it as I genuinely believed it would benefit you to be more realistic and empower you to realise you often had more control over your life than you imagine. I am trying to accept now that you don't want to change and that it is not my responsibility to get you to. Where does this leave me then? It leaves me now with only one option, to change myself, to change the way that I relate to you. So how will this work in practice? Well, I'll stop instigating conversations about the problem between us. I'll call you less often. When I do, we'll try to talk about non-controversial topics. I will no longer be drawn into listening to lengthy negative rants. I'm letting go of feeling responsible for you and your happiness. I accept your life and your happiness are your responsibility. I give myself permission to be happy even though you are not. I give myself permission to focus on my own family, my work and myself. I accept that your decision not to keep in touch with my brother during his illness is your choice and does not involve me. I'm asking only one thing of you. Please try to manage your tone when you speak to me. I take great care to speak to you in a calm and direct way. Often you speak to me in a loud, aggressive, stressful manner. I know you feel this is a more honest way of communicating for you, but it isn't for me. When you shout and rant at me, it doesn't feel like you respect my feelings. I especially don't like it when you do this in front of my son. So how is all this going to change things between us? Well, I imagine our relationship will be more superficial and less volatile. I expect we'll spend occasional time together, trying not to discuss anything meaningful, instead making idle chit-chat about the weather and such. It's not the relationship I had hoped for, but I accept now it's the one we will. It's not the relationship I had hoped for, but I accept now it's the one we must have. Although it doesn't sound ideal, I truly believe it will enable us to treat each other with more respect and give us both the space we need to lead healthier lives. Thank you for reading this letter. I hope my intentions are clear, namely, I wish to end the vicious circle I find myself in with you and instigate a new relationship in which I expect less from you, feel less resentful, and which brings us both more peace. And that this will have a positive effect on my relationship with my own children, benefiting their children in turn. Please feel free to respond if you wish, although I expect nothing from you. Love always. Today, when I awoke, I called out, "Scamper, scamper," and my son came scampering down the hallway and into my bed for our morning cuddle. I pressed the snooze button, and we settled into each other's arms, half asleep in the morning light and the softness of my mother's duvet. After a few moments, he asked me to tell him the story of how I got into trouble every Monday at school. Every Monday at school, we had to write a piece called My News, describing what we'd done at the weekend. Every Monday, I wrote the same sentence. On Sunday morning, we all woke up and got into Mum's bed for a big cuddle, and drew a picture of a huge bed with 5 smiling faces in it. And every week my teacher would sigh and say, "Try to write something different next week." But every week I would forget and enjoy writing up about all being in Mum's bed and draw my big happy picture. I think I even remember drawing this duvet with the pink flowers on it. I've changed my mind. I know you don't want to hear this, but I was wrong when I said it would be pointless to bring up the past. We've established ourselves in response to it. And actually, it's not as bad as you think. You feel guilty about it all and know it has affected me, and so do anything you can to prevent me from bringing it up. I've never wanted to hurt you by doing so, but I think I was naive to think we could ever change until we confront it. Let me start at the beginning. I'll always be sad that you wouldn't allow me to have a relationship with my father. It hurt when you said I couldn't miss what I'd never had. You were wrong about that. During the first 7 years of my life, you had relationships with 3 alcoholic, violently abusive men. You repeatedly put us in danger. These relationships, which were damaging to you, made you emotionally unavailable to us. At different stages in your life, when you were struggling with various problems, I was given more responsibility than I could handle for the younger ones. I think this contributed to me feeling inadequate. You say I've always driven myself too hard. I wonder if it stems from that. In the middle of the night, you woke us up and we all ran away from home in our pyjamas, had our names changed and never went back. You told me our childhood was idyllic and that we were so lucky to have everything you never had. I was more hurt by the fact you denied our truth than by what had actually happened. I felt so confused by your portrayal of events. You compounded this confusion, telling me that children had a warped perception of things. I vividly remember you telling me about awful things that happened to you during your life when I was just too young to handle such information. I began to see you as a victim, someone who needed protection. I would have liked to have seen you as someone older than me, someone who I could rely on, to be there for me. You told me not to tell the others, separating us. Later, when they discovered things for themselves, they were cross with me for keeping secrets from them. When I was a young teenager, I was allowed to do pretty much anything. I looked for boundaries that weren't there. I engaged in destructive activities to get your attention. I felt unnoticed by you. I know at that time you were struggling to come to terms with your mother's death. It was as if you became a teenager again. You said you were angry because you hadn't had a chance to confront her about her failings towards you. You told me many times that you had children to love you because your parents never did. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry for you for feeling that way, but I didn't want you to look to me to fill their place. When I was being your parents, who were being mine? Last night as she put her son to bed, he said, "What did you do today? I thought I'd ask you since you haven't asked me." Every night since he could remember, she had asked him to share his day with her and in turn had told him about hers. For the first time she had forgotten. She smiled to herself. How wonderful that he feels entitled to be so demanding and annoyed by a rare moment's neglect. For the first time she realised he really appreciated all she had done for him. She decided to stop dwelling on the negative aspects and try to... She decided it was time to stop dwelling on the negative aspects and think instead about the ways in which she was grateful to her mother. She was grateful to her mother for carrying her. With each pregnancy, we lose a little more of our youth, our looks and our physical health. It goes unacknowledged but not unnoticed by others. Insecurities creep in. Hormones play havoc with our minds and relationships. Perhaps later we no longer hold these thoughts, but the memories remain. She wanted to thank her for raising her and tending to all her physical needs when she was little. Remembering pretty dresses and shiny shoes, roast dinners on a Sunday, camping with Nanny and Grandad. Christmas was a magical affair. Going to sleep on Christmas Eve with no idea what day it was, and waking up to a house full of decorations, presents and festive cheer.
This ones are so good.
she truly believed the fairies had been. On birthdays, her elaborate birthday cakes were a feast for the eyes, gingerbread cottages, other planets, ballerinas dancing across a frozen silver lake. She thanked her mother for making her move schools to get a better education when she was too scared to leave her friends. That one decision made her whole life. She thanked her mother for making her move schools to get a better education when she was too scared to leave her friends. That one decision made her whole life. She thanked her for all the practical ways in which she continued to show her support. She felt lucky to have a mum to teach her how to fix cars, tend to a garden and do her own DIY.
He's such a good boy. Ricky. Look at me.
I'll stop fueling your dramas when you stop having them. I'll stop fueling your dramas when you stop having them. I'll stop fueling your dramas when you stop having them. I'll stop fueling your dramas when you stop having them. She wondered how much her mother's character had been defined by this obsession, shaped by her daughter's constant critical eye. Had she really been shaped or just imagined? Neither would know how much they'd had a part to play in the definition of each other, their other relationships, the way they felt compelled to live.